Hi everyone, welcome to today's class on Linux Essentials. We are going to cover two important modules today, and that is related to networking and performing remote connections on servers. So today I'll be taking you through few of the things related to networking and as well as performing remote connections on different servers. So network is important concept in Linux. By default, it is a network based system. The Linux is a network based system, and it is very widely used for setting up different servers like web servers, databases, file based servers, or network file share systems. So almost all of the application areas require strong networking, and Linux is good at networking basically. So today in network management we will see how you can check your network interfaces on your system, and we will also see how you can inspect what are the currently running services and what ports they are running on, okay, in your system. So before starting, this module is specifically in respect to networking, and here we are going to investigate mostly our time on identifying the network devices on our system and checking what services and ports the processes are using. So let us begin with the commands directly. So the first command is ifconfig. This command is used for configuring the network interface as well as getting details about a network interface on a Linux system. An alternative to similar command ifconfig is ipconfig, which is actually not present on this system. This command ipconfig is actually present on a Windows based system. So Windows host will have this command present. So if you run ifconfig without any arguments, it will show you the currently attached network devices on your laptop or system. So these are the network interface cards that I have on my system, and this network interface cards are basically representing the NIC cards that I have attached to my laptop, some of which are virtual NICs. Okay, so here if you see, this is the physical adapter that is connected on my system, and these are the virtual cards, and this is my Wi-Fi adapter. So currently I am connected to my router, and this is the Wi-Fi adapter on my system. You will identify it with this are the device IDs that you would see when you run ifconfig command. This is the interface that is used by Docker. So Docker also provides its own networking, so it will install a virtual network interface card on your system, and this is the network interface card that is used by Docker. Similarly, by default you will always have L0 device, that is your loopback address, which is your local host address. So this will be running irrespective of any of these devices. So these are also some of the virtual network interface cards that I currently have, because I have few containers running. So if I check the running containers, I have two containers currently running. So these two containers have these two virtual network interface cards. So ifconfig is our first command, which is basically used for checking the network interface cards that are attached to your system, and it is also used for configuring those network interface cards. So let's say if you have to add another NIC, that is a virtual NIC on your system, you would use this command and create a virtual network interface card along with the IP and other details. Similar to ifconfig, there is also one command called as IP. So it will give you the details of network interface cards along with it will provide you with options to configure those NICs, and this is a replacement of ifconfig command. So IP is a new command which will be replaced which will be replacing ifconfig in future. So IP-R is the option. IP ADDR, yeah. So there are a lot of options in this command, and they have simplified this command when compared to ifconfig. So here if I provide IP ADDR, it will provide me with all the IP addresses along with the device details. So these are the same devices, network devices that I have connected to my system. So these two utilities are basically used for investigating what are your connected network interface devices on the system. Okay. Similarly, you have TCP dump. This is one utility that is used for monitoring the traffic that is coming to your network. So if you want to capture the packets that are coming on your network devices, so let's say these are my network devices, and if I want to capture what all packets are going to and forth on this network devices, then I can use TCP dump. So TCP dump command can also be used to check the network devices connected to the system. So if I pass option -D, capital D, it will list me all the currently attached network devices. So these are the network devices that I have currently on my system. It will also give me what is the current state, whether it is up and running, and it will also show me the other network devices like my Bluetooth adapter, and it will also give me other devices like USB bus details as well. So loopback L0 will be by default present on any Linux system, and these are the other networking devices that I have. Similarly, this is a node I have created specially. This is a running container actually. So I have logged into this container. We will investigate the same network details in this container. So if you see here, this is the network interface card that is attached to this container, okay, which is providing the container the IP address. So this is the IP address. So if we see at the fields that are displayed, you would see this is the device name, this is the IP address detail, the network address basically that is attached to this machine. So it has the IP address of 172 range. Similarly, the net mask and broadcast address, and this RxTX is your transfer and receive bits. So this is the received traffic on this network interface card. Currently 61 MB is used, and this is the transferred address. Like this is the download bit Rx, and this is the upload bit. Okay, so how much has been transferred from this network interface card and how much has been read into this network interface card. And similarly, the loopback address, so it will have the same fields, the interface network address along with the net mask and other details. So this is the way that you will investigate what is the network device connected to your system. So if you want to check for the networking devices, these are the commands: ifconfig, IP, and TCP dump with -D option. Okay, so this will check all the network devices connected. So this will check all the network devices that are connected on your system. But now let's say if we want to check the running ports and services. So for that, if you want to check what are the currently running services, what you would do is basically for checking the service is by checking with the help of PS command. So PS will list you all the currently running processes, right? So you can grep with any of the network services. So let's say if I have SSH running on my system, SSH is used for remote communication. So it will enable your system to get connected from anywhere. So I don't have SSH running on my system, but I can investigate what all services are running and what are their port numbers currently. So for that I will use netstat command. So netstat is used for checking what is the network statistics on the network devices and what are the currently running network connections on my system. So if I run netstat, so I am looking for all the TCP ports. So these are the options. There are a lot of options here. You can configure those options according to your need. And here -T means look for TCP connections, L means to list down all the connections, and also all the connections that are in listening mode, and P is to print the program name as well. So if I type this command here, you will get this output. So here if you see, let me just zoom out a bit. Okay, so just for the convenience of reading, what I have done is I have zoomed out this window. So here if you see, this is the currently running list of services on my system, okay, which are using some port. And what I can do better is I can even add n as argument. So here with n, what it will do, it will not resolve this IP address to host name. So here you will get directly the IP addresses, okay, so no host name resolution will be done. So if you see here, these are all TCP connections, okay, based on the command argument -t will list me all the TCP connections. So these are the active TCP connections on my system, okay, and these are all in listen state, okay. -l will specify the listen state. -p option will specify the currently running program that is using this, okay. So these are the programs that are using it. I have Docker containers running which are also listening on these ports, and I have few services of system like cup and RPC which are also running on these ports. So the main objective here is to list down what all services are currently using network on your system, okay. So these are the current program names, and you can even check with the program ID, PID of those processes. So these are the process IDs along with the name of the program. And this is the local address. So this is my host address on which these systems are running. So these programs are actually listening on this particular IP address and this port, okay. So the format of this is basically, you will get to know like what is the protocol, whether it is TCP or UDP. TCP is basically a reliable protocol when compared to UDP. So most of the services rely on TCP because it has a lot of good reliability. Then here you will see the receive request and send request, and this is the address on which the current program is running. So it is running on my IP address on my system, okay, my default network interface card. So 0.0.0.0 means all the network interface cards, okay, not anyone in specific. So it will be listening on all on port 111. So 111 is the service name. So 111 is the port number basically, which is associated to RPC bind service. So every service or every program will have its own dedicated port, and that port is already defined by default. So it is standard for most of the services. So let's say if I want to check for SSH, so SSH by default runs on port 22, and it is dedicated to SSH by default. You can check the available port numbers for services in etc services file. It is documented in every Linux operating system. This etc service file will contain all the port numbers that is default for different services. So this is a most frequently asked question in interviews as well. So what is the port number for SSH? So here it is a good reference for you to check what is the default port number for different services. So SSH will always run in port 22 by default. You can even configure it to run on some different port, but it uses TCP protocol and it runs on port 22 by default. Similarly, Telnet runs on 23. SMTP is the mail server which runs on port 25 by default, and few common one are also FTP. So FTP, file transfer protocol, this also uses 21 by default. So there are a lot of services. This is defined by default, like which service will use which port, and this is dedicated by default. But even if you have these services running, you can configure those services to run on a different port if that port is available on the system. So if the port 111 is free, I can use it to run some other service. So netstat is one command basically where you can check with different options. So let's say if you want to look for all the UDP ports, so what I will do is I will change from TLPN to ULPN. U means UDP protocol, okay. So any service that is running on UDP will get listed. So DHCP services, they use UDP protocol to communicate and transfer data. So here you will see DH client is a program which actually fetches the DHCP address from a DHCP server. So it runs on port 68. Okay. Then similarly you have DNS resolver. DNS runs on port 53, and this is systemd resolve program that is running on this particular port, and it is also running on UDP protocol. Similarly, few of the protocols, these are my Brave related, my browser related programs that are running on different ports here, and these are all communicating over UDP. Okay, so this way you can investigate what is the currently running process on your system. So let us check the same thing on the container. So in this container, let us investigate with netstat. Let us look for all the TCP based connections first. So here if you see, I have SSH running. Okay, so by default SSH runs on port 22. So if you see, SSH runs by default on port 22, so it is running on same port 22. Okay, and it is running on listing on all the interfaces. So I have currently two interfaces on my system, ETH0 and L0. So it is running on port 22. Okay, and it is currently in listening state, so it is ready to accept new connections. And similarly I have FTP running. So here if you see, this is the program name VSFTPD. So this is a FTP server running on this system, which is running on port 21. So if I look for port 21, so if you see, it is dedicated for FTP. Just give me a second, let us do. Yeah, so if you see here, -w will only match the line which is exact match of this, so I will not receive any other lines here. So this is the exact match, and FTP uses port 21 by default. So this is my current state of my container. So I have SSH and FTP running in a container here. Similarly I can check for any UDP based connections. So there is no UDP connection as such here. Now one important command when compared with netstat is socketstat ss. So it is another utility to investigate sockets. So basically it is similar to netstat, but it is I would say it is a replacement of netstat. So socketstat is a new utility similar to IP. So IP is your new utility when compared to ifconfig. So ifconfig is used for checking your network interfaces. Similarly is the IP command. So socketstat is also the replacement for netstat, and it operates on the same flags. So if I do socketstat -tlnp to list down all the TCP ports, so you will get this details. So here if you see, although the representation is little different, but it is giving me almost same details. So the program ID along with the details of the program, the port on which it is listening, and it is listing down all the TCP related protocol applications. So here this is the current state of all the different applications that we see in netstat. So socketstat is newer utility, and it will be a replacement to netstat in future. Okay, so if you don't have netstat, you might have socketstat available on your system. And similarly is with ifconfig command. So if ifconfig is not available, it's not installed by default, and you might have IP command here. So these are the commands basically used for investigating the network interfaces, along with checking what services are being currently running on your network interfaces and what ports they operate on. So if you have any questions, please let me know. There is one question, that is what is mask address. So if you see here, let's say ifconfig eth0. So in this you are asking me about the net mask of this address basically. So this is calculated based on the IP address range. So here this is the net mask for this IP address range. It is a class B IP address, that's why you have 255.255.0.0. so class B has this net mask basically. So it is just to represent what class of IP address you are using. So this field represents the net mask which is dependent on this particular IP address range. Now let us go forward with performing remote connections and file transfers section. So here if you see there are a few things that we have to discuss on this. So you understand now, like a Unix system is a network based system. Okay, so if you want to communicate with a Unix machine, you probably will be communicating securely to that system through the use of different protocols. Like you will use TCP based protocols to connect to your Linux system, and you will use a few applications. So by default, to communicate to any Linux system you use SSH. So secure shell is a network protocol that is basically used to communicate to Linux system. It is secured in a way like whatever you type when you connect through SSH, it is encrypted and sent onto the target server, and that is one way of communicating through the server. So whenever you connect to any machine through SSH, what you provide is you provide a username. Okay, so username is something that only the intended recipient will know, or some people who are not the intended recipient may guess it. So root is always the default user, so people may guess that root is a user. So by default it is always present on any system. So people will have details related to username, and they will also have details related to IP address. Okay, so suppose this is the IP address that is of my remote machine, and they will have authentication way of authentication will be like providing plain password, or it may be with the help of key file. So the way which which is very widely used and which is very secure is accessing machine with the help of key files. So as you recall, when I had sent you the access detail related to the cloud instance, I had also attached key files to those emails. So using that key file you can communicate to any instance. So I created the key files for you. So if you lose that key file, that is your private key which should be kept securely. So if you lose access to that key file, you might lose access to the instance. Okay, so here password based authentication is disabled. So if I check this machine, let's say, and let us guess the password for root user. So what I am doing here is I am providing SSH with the help of different arguments like the username on which I want to connect and the IP address of the system. So I have disabled password based authentication. So system will deny access if you provide password instead of a key file. Okay, so right now I have configured it to connect with the help of key file. So with SSH you can connect to systems and remotely, and it is also secured by default. So here if you see, I have SSH running on my this Docker container. So what happens basically in background is when you use SSH, it will run a daemon that will be your SSH daemon. So if I check here, this is the SSH daemon that is running currently on this Docker container, okay, which has a process ID of 44. So this SSH daemon will be listening on port 22 by default on all IP addresses. So whenever we make any connection, it will first verify whether that user with which we are making the connection exists, and if it exists, the provided password is correct or not. So if this is the way of authentication basically whenever you establish any connection through SSH, and this is the most secure way. So with SSH, the data between my system and the remote system is always encrypted. Okay, so there is no there is no other way of decrypting the data. So there is no chances like people will do man in the middle attack, MITM attacks, or eavesdropping or something like that. So it is highly secure and recommended. Whenever you want to connect to remote systems, you always use SSH. It is listening here in IPv4 as well as on IPv6. So if you say this is IPv4 address, and this is the address range for IPv6, which is currently not specified. I don't have any IPv6, that's why it is blank. So it is listening on both IPv4 as well as IPv6. Okay, so SSH is one way of establishing connection, and you generate a key file basically when you want to establish any connection. So let us create a user in this demo. Switch to demo user, SSH keygen. So SSH keygen is a command for creating your public private key pairs. So for SSH to communicate over key pairs, we have to generate a public private key pair for the user. So what I have done is I have created a user demo, then I have switched to that particular user, and I have created a key pair for that user. Okay, so by default the key pair will get stored in the user's home directory in .ssh folder. Okay, so I am currently in the user's home directory, home demo. So here if I go to .ssh, here I'll have my key pairs, and they will be saved by default by the name of id_rsa and id_rsa.pub. So .pub is the file that contains your public key, and id_rsa without any extension will contain your private key. So if I do id_rsa.pub, so this is the public key. Okay, so this is your public key, and id_rsa is your private key. So this is the private key file. Okay, so this is a way of generating key files basically for a user to communicate over SSH. So what I need to do is, when I want this user to connect to this machine, I will have to provide him this key file. So you guys have also received a key file, that is the private key, and the public key will be stored here. So what I'll do is I'll store public key in a file called authorized_keys. So authorized_key is a file in which I will specify all the public keys. So what I have done is I have cat the contents of public file. Here the public key file, I have cat those content and redirected it to a new file, that is authorized_keys. So now what I'll do is I'll copy this private key file and try connecting to that machine from my local laptop. So here private, let me create a private key. So I'm pasting my private key here. What will be the IP address? So I'll provide cluster node 0. Okay, so this node name is actually not identified, it is not stored in my etc host, that's why it is complaining about the node name resolution failure. But if I provide the IP address of this Docker container directly, so I have used ifconfig command to check the IP address. So this is the IP address assigned to my container. So if I provide the IP address directly, it will ask me for confirming, and this is the file basically I am using for connecting to that instance. So here it is asking me for password because this container is actually not able to communicate. So chmod 600 authorized keys. Yeah, so here the authorized keys permission were too open. So if you use SSH, there are few errors that you will encounter related to permissions mostly. So the permissions of the file should always be closed, it should not be open for other users. So if I check here, the permissions were open for others and the world. Okay, so people from some other group or from the world might have access to this file with read, write and read permissions. But when I close that permissions to only the owner of the file, that is demo user, then it is here if you see, the numerical representation of this permission is 600. Okay, so when I do that, I am able to log into the machine with SSH. So here what I have done is I have provided my identity file, the private key file, the username and the IP address of the instance. So this instance is currently running on my own system. It is a Docker container, but it has SSH running. So I am able to connect with this user demo node 0. I can use netstat command, but yeah. So in netstat I will be able to see what is the currently running processes on the system. Also, you require some super user privileges to print the program name. I don't have sudo privileges to this user, so it will ask me for sudo password. So this is one way of connecting to the system which is secure. Okay, so SSH is a way which is very widely used. You will always find people sharing you access to a remote system with the help of SSH. So this is one way of connecting to a system. Okay, and in SSH you will always generate key file, and key based authentication is a secure authentication as compared to password authentication. Now we will see about telnet. So telnet is one utility. What is telnet? So telnet is one utility to check connection to a remote system on a particular port. So let's say if I want to check for this IP address, which is the container IP address on port 22. So I know that port 22 is open and it is currently used by SSH. So telnet will check whether that port is open, and it will establish and get connected on that port. So if you see, the connection is now established on port 22, and here it is giving me a little banner representing what application is currently running, and I know port 22 is used by SSH. That's why I'm getting SSH here. So I can close that connection with Control C, or maybe with this symbol caret and square bracket, closing square bracket. So let us check for other port that is open, port 21. So this port 21, here also I will get details about the program name. So it is used by FTP. So 21 is used by FTP, and this is basically used for connecting on port 21. I can also issue commands here. I'm not sure what are the FTP commands. So login with user pass, login user, specify the password, pass demo. So this is also one way of interacting to a system with the help of telnet. Okay, so what I am doing here is I am verifying what are the open port, what is the program running on this port, without actually having any knowledge about the remote system. So this IP can be any IP, any cloud instance IP, and you can specify any port to check whether that port is reachable from the internet. So here if you see, I can also issue few commands. So I am not sure what commands I can issue on FTP, but I mean, just going through this, I was able to figure out, like, I can provide a user and password detail over telnet. So I provided user demo, password demo. However, the user demo does not exist on the target server. That's why it is giving me incorrect login, and the error code is 530. So this is another way of checking whether that connection is happening under the remote server. So if you want to troubleshoot a port on a system, you can use telnet. Telnet is very widely used for that purpose. SFTP is a protocol basically used for transferring files securely. So SFTP I have installed on this container. If you check, this is SFTP program currently running. And basically what is happening here is this is a FTP server running, and it has exposed to port 21. So you can use FTP clients like FileZilla, and few FileZilla is one FTP client. FileZilla, do I have it? No. So FileZilla is one FTP client that I can use to connect on FTP port 21. So if you have any users configured in FTP, so if I add any users, then that user will be you can log in with that user detail, and you will establish a FTP connection on this particular remote system. So FTP is one way of establishing connection, and SFTP is a package that comes on the Linux system. Okay, so this package, you install this package and you start the service, which will start the FTP server, and then your target instance will act as a FTP server. People can log in and they can transfer files or copy files from FTP server. So this is one way of doing things. This connection is lost here. It is very difficult, actually. I find it difficult to come out of this sessions of Telnet. Okay, so it will take some time, and when it will time out, it will automatically delete this connection session. So so this is the FTP server running on my system. You can install it with the help of so this is the package name. So let us just check the package name, yum info vsftpd. vsftpd, this is the package name. It is a very secure file transfer protocol daemon, and this is the package that you will require if you want to convert your system into a FTP server. Okay, so similar package is also available for your Ubuntu based system. So I might have this available on my system. I have FTP here, but not vsftpd. So if I do apt vsftp apt cache search, let us search for that package name, whether it exists in Ubuntu repositories. Yeah, so if you see, it is existing, and few other similar utilities also it will search and return this to me. So vsftpd is a lightweight FTP server written for security. So apt cache search is a command that it will basically search for the package in the Ubuntu repositories. You might have received a cheat sheet to use package managers on different systems that I shared yesterday on Slack. You can search for these commands. It has all the different commands used for searching packages and installing packages. So this is a very secure file transfer protocol daemon. So there is one question: what is a daemon? So daemon is basically a process that runs in background. Okay, so when you don't want to interact with the process and you want that process to run forever in background, you will start that process in a daemon mode. So daemon mode is basically the process will be running in background by default. So if I check SSH is provided with a flag -D. So -D will run SSH in background in daemon mode. In daemon mode means the process will be active and it will be listening. However, you will not be interacting with that process. It won't be a regular interaction. The process will be active and it will be doing its job in the background. So if you want to run your process in background, you will always daemonize it. So if I do sshd man, so there is no man page for SSH here. Let me check here, sshd. Here, let me go here, daemon. So here on the Red Hat based system, it will be sshd-d, which will start this process in daemon mode. So let us just copy the same. So it is actually not starting. This is a container. It will have its limitations. Actually, this is not a full-blown machine. It is just a container running. So in container, I may encounter a lot of problems. Here SSH is not installed by default, so I don't have SSH on my local laptop, but daemon is just a process that runs in background. It is simple as that. Now let's say I want to copy files and directories to and from other systems. So basically, let's say if I want to transfer files, I can directly use SFTP. So once I make this server as a file server, I can use FTP clients like FileZilla to connect to FTP and copy files. Similarly, if I want to copy files with SSH or SCP, there is a command that is what is SCP? SCP is one command which is a part of SSH family. So here it will copy files securely with the help of SSH protocol. So let's say if I want to copy some file, so if I go to temporary directory, I have my private key file here which I used for communicating through my Docker container. So let's say I want to copy this PNG file. So this is the PNG file. So I'll use SCP command here. What I'm doing is I'm providing the command along with different options. So I'm providing the file that I want to copy. So let us first provide the private key file. So -i private key, I am specifying to use this private key. Then I'm using video.png file to copy onto the server. So on which server? Demo @ this server, which is my Docker container. So if I copy this IP address, so here in the Docker container, I'll copy this file in temporary directory. So here what I'm doing is I have specified this private key file to use for authenticating through this server, that is 172.17.0.2 for the user demo, and I am copying this video.png file into temp directory. SCP, it is showing command not found. Okay, -i private key file. -i followed by the name of the file that I want to copy and then the location. I'm not sure, it is actually not copying to that location. Let me copy it to the home directory. No, it is actually not copying on to the remote file, but you get the idea, right? This command will be used and it will use SSH by default to copy the file. So let us copy it to some other node. So let me copy this to my Oracle machine, so my cloud instance. So if you see right now I have copied this file video.png on my Oracle instance, that is my cloud instance. So if I go to Oracle instance, I'll see that file is copied here. Okay, I was not able to copy that to my container, Docker container. Container always will have few limitations when compared to machines, when compared to a full-blown operating system. So it does not have any operating system, it is just an abstraction of the operating system. That's why you will always face challenges when doing something that is normal with a full-blown operating system. So what I have done here is I have copied a file video.png onto a remote system, that is my Oracle cloud instance. So SCP command is basically used here when I want to copy any files or directories to a remote system. And similarly, let's say if I have to copy that file from that machine to local system, so here I have specified video.png file and let us copy it to home directory on this system. So if I go to home directory, I'll find that file here. So you get the idea, like basically what we are doing is we are just copying files from local machine to a remote system with the help of SCP command. So SCP is similar to your SSH, it will use SSH protocol by default and it will copy your files using SSH. So this is it like these things are necessary for you to understand how you copy files remotely onto the remote system, what are the different protocols are used for copying files, and what all services are used by default. SSH is very widely used for initiating remote connections. Then you can even make your server as a file server with SFTP, and you can check for open ports on a remote system with help of telnet. There are also few other networking commands that are very widely used. Nmap is one to check for open ports. So if I want to check for open ports on my Docker container, I am using nmap provided by the IP address of that container. So it will show me what is the state of that port, whether that port is open, closed or restricted, and the service that is running on that port. So nmap is also used if you want to check what is the open port on the system. So let's say if you want to improve your security of your instance, then you will see which ports are open and you will try to restrict the ports. So you can use nmap to basically discover the ports onto your system. So there is one question: can you explain public and private key mechanism once? Okay. So what happens in public and private key mechanism on SSH is basically what you do is let me go to a user. Yeah, so let me go to this user demo on my instance. Okay, so I am the user demo on my instance. So when you want to communicate through SSH, you will always communicate through, first is you can provide your plain password, plain text password, or second way is to basically use public private key pairs. Okay, so these are the two basic mechanisms to communicate through SSH. Okay, so plain text password is actually not very reliable way, because a user may remember his password, but some other people can also guess passwords, and people usually guess passwords through password detectors. So they will do a denial of service on your system on a particular username, and then they will guess passwords with their applications. So plain text password is actually insecure way of communicating through SSH. So people usually prefer public private key pairs for communicating over SSH. Now with public private key pair, what you have to do is, whenever you want to enable access through public private key pair for a user, what you will do is you will generate the key pair first. So SSH keygen is the command to basically generate the public private key pair. So SSH keygen, so it will generate the key pair, and it is also used for managing those key pairs. So SSH keygen is a command for generating a key pair. So what I am doing is I am just running it without any options. So I am just running this command. It will generate the key pair file for me. Okay, so by default it will always write it will create two files, that is id_rsa and id_rsa.pub. .pub is the extension for public key. Okay, so here it is saying me like the file already exists. I will want to overwrite it, so I will generate a new file here. It will ask me for a passphrase. I can even keep it blank. So here the fingerprint is printed for this particular server along with the key files. So this key files are created for me now. So if I go to .ssh, you will see the timestamp of these files is changed, okay, when compared to authorized keys file. So these files were updated very recently. So now this is my public key and this is the private key. Okay, so what will happen is the user who wants access to this machine should have this private key. Okay, so what I will do is I will provide this private key to the target user. So once I provide him the private key, and if he knows the IP address of the machine and the username, he can connect to the system. Okay, so this is by default the default way of basically giving access to someone with the help of public private key pair. So you generate the public private key of that user and provide the user with the private key. Okay, so even if you create instances on AWS, it will always ask you to create a key pair, and it will tell you to download your private key. So you need to keep this private key securely on the system, because you will always require this private key to prove your identity on the system. Okay, so right now I had copied the private key, and this private key is overwritten now. So ideally I should not be able to communicate using the existing private key that I had. Okay, so the key files are already overwritten. Right now the timestamp is changed, but I have a public key that does not match this private key, so this private key is not available right now. So if I do SSH, okay, so I have this public key already available here in the authorized keys. So what I did was, my authorized key file contains the private key that I already had. So if you see, this is the public key. Right now the new public key is not written in this file. Okay, I had this older public key and the older private key. So with that, I was able to establish the connection. But if I want to remove the connection of this user, what I will do is I'll simply go to authorized keys file, and I'll just delete a bit here. Let's say I delete 1A, okay, from the start. And if the user tries to connect again, he will not be able to get connected. So let me see whether I was able to save this file. 4 times A. Okay, yeah, now I have saved the file. So now the public key is corrupted for the private key that I have. Okay, that's why it is asking me for password and the connection is not getting established. So earlier I was not able to save my file. So let's say here if I add 2A, okay, so earlier the file was in this shape. Now if I try to connect again, I'll be able to connect to the machine. So if you delete any bits from authorized key file, the user will not be able to communicate. Okay, and other way of disabling user access is to clear the content of authorized keys, as well as rewriting or overwriting the public private key files with the help of SSH keygen command. So this is a way of basically giving access to someone with the help of SSH. Okay, so it is a secured way where people need to have their own private key to prove their identity on the target system, and the public key of that private key should be present in authorized keys file. So authorized keys file contains all the public key that are authenticated and that are currently being used. So if you want to add access to other users, you will add their public key inside this file. So let's say if I have created a new public key, I'll append it to the authorized key file. So here I have 2 different public keys now. Okay, so now if I forward this ID_RSA to a new user, or if I provide this private key to the same user, he will be able to access with this private key as well, because the corresponding public key is present in this file. Okay, so key based authentication is used very widely these days. Also the password authentication is disabled by default. So you will be able to basically see you will get a public private key, and you will get details to connect to the system, like the username and the IP address, and with that you will be able to connect to the remote system. And SSH is always very secure, and it is used by very widely. So if you want to know what are the default ports of different services, you can check etc services file. So etc services is documented for all the default ports for different services. Okay, so let's say if I want to check for DNS, so DNS related ports, so DNS will have this port numbers. So these are the port numbers that are dedicated for DNS services. 53 is the port number actually. I don't know why it is not showing here. DNS or DHCP 68. Yeah. All right, so do you have any questions, any other doubts? We have covered almost all of the modules. I'm really sorry that I could not cover it in the second week. I was very occupied in that week, but today is the last class. We have covered almost everything, and I'll also upload today's session on my YouTube channel and post you the link. So if you guys have any question, please let me know. I'll take up those questions.